breathe out, ladies and gentlemen, because here we go. West Ham have reportedly made their first summer signing of the window, and it's only the 28th of May. I genuinely had to check the calendar there because I am shocked that is happening this early. Rare scenes at West Ham, never seen before. Well, probably seen before a couple of times, but we really seem to be making it happen this summer, and that is something that's very exciting. And regardless of what you think about the player we're about to talk about, because there has been somewhat of a mixed reaction on social media from what I've seen, the fact that we are making these sorts of moves early in the window is an incredibly positive sign for me. But let's cover all that in a minute. We haven't quite got the shirt pick yet, but what we do have are some top West Ham transfer news sources reporting, confirming that Fabrício Bruno, the Flamengo 28-year-old centre-back, has joined West Ham. Fabrizio Romano, one of those top-tier people we're speaking about, tweeting this morning, Fabrício Bruno to West Ham, here we go. Verbal agreement now in place between West Ham and Flamengo for 28-year-old centre-back. Exclusive details, 12 million euros fixed fee plus 1.5 million euros add-ons. Brazilian centre-back will be the first signing for Lopetegui at West Ham. Now, again, for those who are uninitiated, Romano is up there as one of our top sources. We like to have a little ranking. We sort of do it internally. Sometimes we talk about it on the West Ham Transfer Rumour Show, of which this is not one today, I guess. This is West Ham Transfer, just news, facts today, none of these rumours. We have a tier list. We believe certain people more than we would believe others, let's say, and Romano is at the top. You've got Fabrizio Romano, you've got Jacob Steinberg at The Guardian, you've got ex-West Ham employee Sean Whetstone, very believable. These are your sort of top dons. When they say stuff about this, you believe them. I was doing the Four Horsemen thing there. You believe them, right? And so when Fabrizio says, here we go, which is his catchphrase, again, for the uninitiated, his catchphrase is here we go. He's very careful about when he says it and when he doesn't say it. When he uses those words, that's when the transfer is confirmed to be happening. That's when it's locked in, it's happening. He doesn't tend to use those words and be wrong, basically. He might speak a lot in the build-up to say, it's, oh, this person's in advanced talks. He might even go as far as to say, we're not quite at here we go, but this is where we are. When he says, it's happening, here we go, it's happening. And this was also followed up by some of the other big top tier sources, the Four Horsemen sources. You're talking X and the West Ham Way sort of quote retweeted it earlier. Well, he screenshotted it and put it out saying, as first reported by X, here it is. Sean Whetstone also tweeting out shortly after, as called by Fabrizio Romano and first mentioned by X in April, 28-year-old Brazilian centre-back Fabrício Bruno from Flamengo is looking odds on like our first signing of the summer at £10.2 million. We've got the conversion rate now for those of us who actually want to think about in pounds as opposed to euros. £10.2 million with £1.3 million of potential add-ons. Flamengo signed Fabrício Bruno from Red Bull Bragantino in 2022 on a 3-year contract for a fee of 2.5 million euros. This last little nugget of information you put out, interesting to me. Exciting to me almost. Tim Steidten was scouting several players in Brazil and at the end of last season and is prioritising 2 centre-backs and a striker by the end of June. And it looks like we have one of those sorted, one of those centre-backs. Now, again, like I said, this player has received a sort of mixed reception on Twitter. And I think that's because he doesn't fill some of those categories that we like to get excited about. You know, when we've spoken a lot about Tim Steidten, we've spoken about, oh, he goes out there, he gets these incredible young players for next to nothing, and then you can sell them for loads, and they go on to be world beaters. Look at Xabi Alonso, look at Bayer Leverkusen, look at Jeremy Frimpong, look at this, look at that, right? And he doesn't fill any of those categories. He's not young. He's 28 years old. He's very experienced. Young, but potentially you could make an argument for sort of not quite in or coming into his strong years as a centre-back. He's not past it by any stretch of the imagination, but you wouldn't call him young. He's not expensive. He's not a big, flashy, expensive signing. You know, when we went and signed, you know, Scamacca, for example, or Haller or Paquetá, or any of these players, you know, 12 million euros, 10 million euros, whatever it will end up being eventually, maybe close to 12 million pounds eventually. It's not a big expensive thing, so you can't really get excited about that side of it. He's not a player we all know, which again is not one of those things, even when it isn't someone we all know like a Scamacca or Haller, for example, who, you know, in general, the West Ham fan base probably weren't super aware of. Maybe had heard of his name, but weren't watching him regularly or anything. But they were big money signings, so they're exciting. He's in an unglamorous position as a centre-back. It's not something you tend to get super excited about unless they film one of the other categories. And I guess you could put in there a West Ham fan like Glenn Downs or something, right? He doesn't really fill any of those categories. And so the reception has been relatively lukewarm. People are sort of like, is this something we should be doing? He gets compared a lot on social media, I see, to Balbuena, which makes sense. Another relatively experienced centre-back signed for not much money from South America. But the thing is, with that comparison specifically, I think people forget how good Balbuena was in his first year for us. I mean, look, did he work out long term? I'm not going to sit here and act like he did, but realistically, the guy was incredible that first year. Him and Diop formed a partnership that was absolutely incredible. People were talking about Diop because he was the young, exciting one, but Balbuena was just as important in that partnership for me. And yeah, it didn't work out in the long term, but I think for the money we paid, we got a decent work out of it. It wasn't necessarily a bad signing by any stretch of imagination in my mind. And I think with Bruno, I think what we have to remember as well is the word rebuild again keeps getting thrown around at West Ham. We do need a lot of signings. We don't have as much money as we would perhaps all want to make that happen. But the other thing is, so one, having players come in for these sort of fees can allow you to spend more money in positions that you really need, especially when we need two centre-backs. You can't be spending big money on two centre-backs when we're in the sort of financial situations that we're in. We aren't a Newcastle, we aren't a Manchester City sort of thing. But the other thing is we're changing style. And there are players who aren't leaving, probably, potentially, who knows, they might end up leaving. But people like Thomas Souček, for example, who don't really fit the Lopetegui style, or at least don't necessarily look instantaneously like they fit his system. And with those people staying, it only serves to emphasize style more. And so if you can get an experienced, and he is experienced, he has just broken into the Brazil squad in this past year, which is showing you how good form he's in and how much he's managed to step up. This isn't just some nobody. And I know the Brazil team isn't exactly 2002 Brazil, but let's be real, still playing for your national team is a big deal. It's not like he's just nobody because of it. We can't just write off the Brazilian we can't just write off the most successful national football team in history. Do you know what I mean? It still means something to play for Brazil. We will talk about it endlessly when Paquetá does it, so we can't exactly just write it off as if it's nothing. Getting someone like this who is of that age, who is experienced, who is at a good level, who can play the style for not a lot of money is a really, really good thing for me. And yeah, I'm not expecting him to come in and be an absolute world beater. That's kind of the beautiful system with paying this much for someone. You're setting expectations at a certain level. I'm not expecting Issa Diop first year. I'm not even necessarily expecting Balbuena first year. But if this is a guy who doesn't even necessarily have to start, but can be incredibly reliable and called upon and do the job he needs to do, for this amount of money, that can be really, really useful. And when people talk about Steiden and people talk about his ability to go and find these gems and, you know, these unknown wonder kids like Jeremy Frimpong, for example, we ignore the fact a lot of people knew who he was anyway, but like going and finding them and making it happen and look what the team he's building. Look, what Bayer Leverkusen do is an incredible thing. It's wonderful and they've got a lot of success this season because of it, right? But let's not kid ourselves. He has signed older people. Now, again, Tim Steiner was not the only person at Bayer Leverkusen, but just looking at his period there, he signed 28-year-olds, 29-year-olds. It wasn't just only buying 22-year-olds and then waiting for them to come good. No, he did sign experienced players because you do need a mixture, you know? As much as like we all mock the you can't win anything with kids thing and listen how unbelievably wrong he was, and he was, but realistically, there's still some experienced heads needed in those teams. You know, you can't just go and buy every 22-year-old and make it happen. It's just not realistic. You do need experienced people, and that has been proven. If you can find an experienced person who is for the good fee, and listen, £12 million max. What would it be max? Let's do the maths. 10.2 plus 1.3. So £11.5 million max is what it will be. He'll be on not huge amount of wages because he's been coming from Brazil. So it's not like signing someone from another English club where they'll be asking for 120 grand a week or whatever madness it would be, right? Tosin Adarabioyo, put him in there, right? Someone who I would really like at West Ham, but he was asking for over 100k a week. That's not happening. I'm not taking Tosin Adarabioyo for 100k a week. Are you crazy? This isn't going to be that expensive. Actually, that can be really smart. And there's one more piece of news, and this is We're now in the West Ham transfer rumours section of the show. Welcome. Another piece of news that I wanted to throw in, which I think just adds a little bit more context to this whole thing. And it was something Sean Whetstone also put out on Twitter, West Ham Football on Twitter. Again, one of those top tier sources. And this is going to get a bit mathsy in the middle. I'm going to read out his full tweet for context. It's going to get a bit mathsy, but on the other side of it, we'll talk about the context, how this applies to Bruno, what this means for the rest of our transfer window. But, quote, assuming Lucas Paquetá does not now leave West Ham this summer, West Ham should have around £100 million to spend on transfers. That is based on around £30 million net spend budgeted for finishing 9th this season, plus £30 million of additional revenue for the Europa League, plus 40 million of player sales, assuming Benny is sold for 15 million, Downs is sold for around 15.5 million, on top of Kehrer already sold for 9.5. Further player sales such as Gerd, Ings, Antonio, or James Ward-Prowse would add more to the summer transfer pot. This was obviously received incredibly negatively, and it's not a shock, right? Partly because it wasn't reported. He wrote 100 million, right? Sean put out there the figure of 100 million, right? Including some player sales, one or two that haven't happened yet. But for example, I saw it getting reported that West Ham have an 85 million pound budget because it's not including, they weren't including the sale of Downs, which obviously at this point has not happened. So they're taking away the 15 million from 100 million and they're getting 85. And 85 was the figure I was seeing getting banded around a lot. And that was obviously being responded to and reacted to very negatively, which you would expect. And realistically, for the size of rebuild we need to do at West Ham, yeah, it's not enough. It's not enough. But we have to realise that there is a lot to do at West Ham this summer. And it's one of those things where the signings of people like Bruno for maximum £11 million can really, really help us. In these tight budgeted scenarios, it can really, really help us. It means that we can spend more money. Every penny that we save in these sort of deals means we can go and spend bigger on other positions we need, which is for the same reason why we see someone like Sergio Guirassy, who's been linked quite a lot recently, who's another, I think he might also be 28, the Stuttgart striker, who obviously did very, very well this year. I think got as many goals as he did games in the Bundesliga, has been ridiculously good. A breakout season for him, has never been at the levels of forms that he had this season. Reportedly has a release clause in there for £15 million. Again, it's not one of those signings that's going to excite everyone because he's 28 years old and it wouldn't be for that much money and he doesn't play for a big club and all these other things. There'd be a bit more excitement here because we have known about him, and again, his goal scoring record is just frankly ridiculous, although people would be like, will it continue in the Premier League and all these other stuff? And listen, all fair things to consider, all fair notions to think about. However, having said all that, realistically, those sort of signings can again give us the budget, because when you look at what's happening, for example, with Wesley Gazanova, who's the other Brazilian player we've been linked to a lot over the last month, people saying it was essentially done. There were some reports that were in advanced talks, that it was really close to happening and all these other sort of things. And then over the last week, we've heard, the president of the club are now asking for 5 million more, 10 million more. He's now looking at going from being a 20 million pound player to a 30 to 35 million pound player. Those kind of things happening for those sort of players make it a lot less likely to be possible. He's a young, exciting winger, Brazilian, 19. Look at it, it's our vibe, right? If we can save money on the likes of Bruno, who's going to be a squad choice centre-back, on the likes of Guirassy, who you're hoping can come in and really do a job, and Nesri, another person who we get perennially linked to, now feeling a lot more real because, of course, he played under Lopetegui and we're getting linked to him again. We know he works in the system. He won't be anywhere near as much money as he once was because he had some significant injuries and he's slightly older now. Those are the sort of transfers that can help you make the ones like Wesley happen. Those exciting transfers. It's going to be a difficult summer to figure out. And I'm glad I am not Tim Stuyton or Lopetegui or Mark Noble or David Sullivan or whoever else is on that transfer committee trying to figure out how to do it, because it feels like there's a big budget. So there is a spreadsheet with lots of different values in it, lots of different equations in it, lots of equals sums and then different cells collected, because there's going to be a lot of moving parts. And certain things like this move for Fabrizio Bruno. We haven't signed Romano, we signed Bruno. can be really, really beneficial. I believe that heavily, but how do you feel? Let me know in the comment section below, either about this story, about 100 million, or anything else. We will be back. I think there'll be a video on the channel later on today as well. I think there'll be another one, an extra bonus video. Gio is currently away, but himself and Gonzo have recorded a couple of videos. I can't remember which one it is. I'll have to go and check and sort it out in a minute and do the thumbnail for it. However, there will be another video up this evening, and then of course tomorrow and everything else. But if we do get the shirt signature, if we do get a shirt picture, or we get any other big news, we will of course be breaking it and talking about it right here on Hammers Chat. So subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure to like the video because it helps us out massively. And yeah, appreciate you for joining. Fabrício Bruno, first West Ham summer signing, all but confirmed. Give me that shirt pick, give me that scarf pick. We don't get scarf picks anymore, but give me that scarf pick. And yeah, give me the jet pick, Steiden jet pick. See you later, everyone. Bye.